last part of this evening's program is a question and answer session. And I believe there are still many questions coming in from people on the retreat. So we'll see how we do. The first question is from Anonymous. It's a nice name. When recollecting the good deeds I have done during meditation, I have recalled instances of donating food to those who are in need. However, it was because I wanted to sample different kinds of foods and got them in bulk, which is out of my gluttony and greed, but I had good intention to share the food. Is this good merit? Is giving away what you do not want to others considered a good deed? Well, karma and merit is determined by intention. What kind of intention lies behind the act? So as you say, maybe you just have stuff that's cluttering up your kitchen larder and you want to get rid of it. And your intention is more just to provide convenience for yourself by cleaning out your cupboard rather than thinking of someone in need. I doubt if that's the case in your case, but it could be like that. And we sometimes have a mixture of intentions. It depends which one is more prominent in the act. So you might be just trying to clean up and get rid of stuff, so it's almost like using the person you give the food to like a rubbish collector. Or it may be that you're coming from genuine compassion and you have a excess of food, which is fair enough. We usually have more than we need, and you're sharing it with someone who can make use of it, and why not? And that is a good deed. Even if your intention is not that strong, you are just cleaning out your cupboard, say, well, if you make the effort to get that food to someone in need, it's still good karma. But like you say, maybe modified by some attachment, some greed as well, or just seeking convenience. So the best kind of giving is where you're doing it wholeheartedly with a strong intention, both out of compassion for the person who's receiving the offering, and also out of a wish to let go of some of your own attachment. So some of the best kind of giving is, when you give away something you like, you want to keep, but you make yourself give it away or share to teach yourself to let go of attachment. So it's something, the practice of dana, sharing, giving, is not always just a simple thing. It's something you can think about more deeply. What is a good way to achieve your goal, both of helping someone else, or helping others, or supporting sangha in the case of a monastery, but at the same time letting go of your own attachment and teaching yourself to let go of the desire to accumulate wealth and things and be possessive of things. You might have to think of your own way to achieve that. How can you do that in the dana that you practice? Because even dana, even though it is a good thing, it can become a little perfunctory, and we just give away, and other intentions and reasons can slip into it. So maybe we're just doing it to make ourselves feel good, or feel better about ourselves, or we're doing it just following someone else when our own intention is not that strong, but we're just following on because it's more like a cultural or a social thing. So to practice dana as part of the practice, you have to really look into your intention and try and find skillful ways, and look for skillful ways to help others. Give things, give help and support to others that is useful, and also you're looking at ways to reduce your own attachments So you have to know for yourself. Reflect on your own intention as you practice dana. Next question is from Anne. Namatsagan Lumpur. What should I do if I get bullied at work? An old lady who has been working there for a long time has been bitter to me every week. For example, my boss ordered me to check the recipes, but she came in, checked the recipes and took them to my boss. Then my boss told me to let her do her work, don't bother her. I just kept quiet. My friend advised me to inform the HR manager, but I think I should let go, try to be nice and less involved with her. But then again, excuse me, but then again, when I tried not to get involved with her, she's telling everyone that I'm very rude to her. It is very hard because an evil thought at the back of my head kept telling me that I will talk to the HR manager if she's nasty to me one more time. Unfortunately, this is a very common one, isn't it? Being bullied is not nice. I don't know all the details of your particular situation, but if it's an older person, generally, our first response may be to try to be patient with that person. Maybe they have their own problems and suffering, and so they're like this, not just with us, but maybe with other people as well. Maybe they're not very happy in themselves, and it comes out in this way. So see if you can be patient with the situation. Just get on with your job, whatever she says. If it's not true, if anyone else asks you, you can explain what you see is the truth, what's correct as far as you know. If no one else asks you, well, just get on with your job and ignore her and ignore the situation if you can. Of course, if she escalates the situation and makes life really miserable for you, or tells a lot of lies, or exaggerates things and makes trouble for you with your boss, well, you may have to do something about it, whatever the correct avenue for that is. Maybe talk to the HR manager or talk to the boss. But for the moment, just see how patient you can be with the situation and focus on your own job. Get on with that and try and ignore her as much as possible. I think in the beginning that would be a good start. And we'll see how we go. Sometimes people, give us a hard time, and it's not always us personally, it's just their own karma, their own negativity coming out. So if we can ride it out, maybe things will change by themselves. Another question. Dear Ajahn, today, day 2 of the retreat, I'm experiencing quite a bit of dissatisfaction about fairly mundane aspects of my life. I was wondering whether this could be defilement arising due to yesterday's focused meditation and contemplation and reflection, or just because it is the nature of my karma. I felt very uplifted and joyful. So I guess yesterday you felt I felt very uplifted, joyful, energized and grateful throughout the day and night yesterday. So this sense of frustration and dissatisfaction is unexpected. Would you be able to offer reflection on this? Easy one, our mind is not sure. One day we're happy and elated, next day we're down and annoyed and irritated, and that's totally normal. Everyone experiences the ups and downs of the mind This is why we're practicing, to find some steadiness, evenness of mind through the practice, bringing up more mindfulness, wisely reflecting on our mental activity and our body and mind. Over time, gaining experience in the practice, you will find you don't get so pushed around by your moods. But it's totally normal for the mind, one moment to be elated when you put effort into your practice and things seem to go well for a while, and then as that wears off, the feeling of elation wears off, the inspiration, the faith subsides, we start to notice things that irritate us. How much of life is like that? You get a new job, and the first period of that new job is the honeymoon period. You're happy, it's good, and then after a while you start to notice the faults, or other people we notice their faults or their behavior, and our perception of the job changes. Or even relationships. You're in a new relationship and it's all good for the first period, honeymoon period. Then after a while you get to know your partner, and then you start to notice some of their weaknesses and faults that you didn't see before, and things change. So meditation is just the same. We have highs and lows. Through the lows we have to practice patience and wise reflection, skillfully turn our mind to reflect on our experience, bring a bit of wisdom in to see, it's impermanent, it's not sure. It's just thoughts. If you're having negative thoughts, they're just thoughts. Thoughts are just thoughts. Feelings are just feelings. Sometimes we have a lot of pleasure, sometimes some pain. Try and see them all as objects of mind that arise according to their conditions. They're there for a while, they pass away. Not to give them too much importance, but keep returning to mindfulness and reflecting on the Dhamma. From Menaka. During meditation, when the mind goes into samadhi, I contemplate. During and after contemplating, I realize that the samadhi has disappeared. Is this normal, or does it depend on everyone's development in Indriya Dhamma? After contemplating, should I go back to samatha bhavana and bring the samadhi back? Yes. Simple answer. Bring the samadhi back. And this is a common experience, again, in meditation. We put effort into developing mindfulness on our meditation objects, such as the breath, and all that effort may bear its fruit, and mindfulness becomes more continuous. The mental hindrances are in abeyance, they fade, so we experience some calm, some peace of mind, and maybe that's a good point to contemplate your experience. But the practice of contemplation, developing wisdom and understanding, uses up mental energy, so it can be a little draining, and also it's so easy to fall back into just ordinary thinking, discursive thinking, and the level of our mindfulness can drop, the level of the samadhi fades. So you have to keep topping it up, and so many practitioners seem to have this experience of developing their samatha, the states of calm, the strength of mindfulness, put a lot of effort into that, then contemplate for a while, and then have to go back to the samatha bhavana, developing mindfulness on an object again, because their mindfulness and samadhi is not yet firm and established. When we develop samatha bhavana, we're bringing the mind to a state of rest. We're relaxing in the meditation, resting. When it's going well, then piti and sukha starts to arise. And that's an important foundation so that we can contemplate the three characteristics in our experience, seeing the impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, selfless nature of body and mental phenomena, feelings, perceptions, thoughts. But that all uses up energy, and as the mental energy is used up, we get tired, and then our mindfulness will slip. So we have to go back and re-establish mindfulness. And you just have to accept there's this dynamic back and forth. But as wisdom improves and our experience in the practice improves, then we generally are also able to be more patient and enduring with states of negativity or painful feelings and so on. And this back and forth between developing samatha, developing vipassana and insight, maybe there's a little less of the back and forth, and the qualities of the mind are able to sustain contemplation longer and deeper. But that comes through experience. Another question in Thai now, so I'll read it and answer it in Thai, and then I'll translate a bit for those who don't speak Thai. ครับนมัสการหลวงพ่อข้าจากคำ Can you make the font bigger? จากคำถามเกี่ยวกับคนตายคงตายมาเกือบ50 ปีตายมาเข้าร้างบ้าที่บ้านบอกว่าโมโห You have to go back next slide. Yeah. ที่หลานชายเอาของไปไว้ที่ห่วงจุ้ยของท่านรกมากจะทำอย่างไรดีคะที่จะช่วยท่านให้หลุดพ้นจากภพภูมินี้ธรรมดาเวลาทำบุญก็อุทิศบุญกุศลให้ทุกครั้งกราบขอบพระคุณข้าจากน้ำ ก็ทำต่ออุทิศกุศลต่อปฏิบัติธรรมให้ทานรักษาศีลบำเพ็ญภาวนาสม่ำเสมอแต่ว่าบุญที่เราอุทิศให้คนนี้ก็จะถึงเขาจะอนุโมทนามากน้อยแค่ไหนก็แล้วแต่เหตุปัจจัยแล้วแต่กรรมของเขาบางที่จิตใจเขากับจิตใจเราอาจจะห่างกันก็เลยบุญกุศลที่เราสร้างไว้อาจจะยังไม่ถึงหรือเขายังไม่รับอนุโมทนาก็เลยยังหลุดพ้นจากภพภูมินี้ไม่ได้บางทีเราต้องชวนคนอื่นที่อยู่ใกล้ชิดเขาที่จำเขาได้รู้จักเขาทำบุญด้วยบางครั้งอาจจะช่วยนะเช่นหลานชายที่เขาโมโหหรือใครที่อยู่ใกล้ชิดก็พยายามร่วมกันถวายสังฆทานอุทิศให้แต่ว่าถ้าจะทำให้เขาสบายใจก็ให้หลานไปจัดห่วงจุ้ยใหม่ก็ให้มันไม่ให้มันรกมากให้มันสะอาดให้ดูแลด้วยเมตตาด้วยเมตตากรุณาแต่ว่าเวลาเราทำบุญเราน่าจะอธิษฐานจิตขอให้คนนี้ไปปล่อยวางในอุปทานในวงตระกูลในภพภูมิที่เขาอยู่ขอให้เขาไปเกิดในภพภูมิใหม่อธิษฐานจิตอย่างนี้ให้เขาปล่อยวางให้เขาปล่อยวางอุปทานในโลกนี้ในอดีตชาติในวงตระกูลของเขาก็จะได้ไปเกิดในภพภูมิที่ดีอาจจะพูดในใจว่าขอให้คุณลุงคนนี้ขอให้ไปเกิดนะเราอนุญาตให้ไปแล้วได้ให้ไปเกิดใหม่นะไม่ต้องไปอยู่แถวนี้ไม่ต้องอยู่กับเราแล้วไม่ต้องห่วงเราแล้วเราสบายแล้วให้เราไปเกิดในภพภูมิใหม่ให้ไปเกิดเป็นมนุษย์ก็ยิ่งดีจะได้ทำความดีปฏิบัติธรรมต่อไปก็แนะนำทุกคนให้อธิษฐานจิตอย่างนี้ก็ดีนะทุกคนจะได้ช่วยเข้าปล่อยวางจะได้ไม่กลับมาเข้าร้างใครไม่มากลับมารบกวนใครเขาจะได้ไปเกิดใหม่ So there's a question about a deceased, departed relative who from time to time enters in the form of a medium, enters the mind, the citta of one of the family members and complains So there's a ghost complaining, particularly about their grave. There's a family grave, as we have in the Chinese tradition, and there's one nephew, it looks like, my nephew or niece, who goes and puts all kinds of stuff on the grave, and so they're getting angry. They don't like the way the grave has been arranged and all this kind of stuff building up there. They want it to be tidied up, so they come to complain about that. All of this is coming from attachment and clinging to the family, to the grave, to the people of the family. And so everybody can make some merit, maybe offer Sanghadana and make merit regularly and share the merits with this departed relative. Encourage them to go off and get born in a better realm, be reborn as a human. So you can do that as a personal adhitthana in your meditation, or when you're making merit, you wish for them to be reborn so that they don't have to suffer with the attachment to the family, the grave, and keep coming back and complaining about how things are being done. May they be free from those complaints and that state of mind that's unhappy. May they achieve a good, wholesome rebirth, so that they can carry on practicing Dhamma in their next life. Next question is from Hui, it looks like, in Malaysia. Should one desire for merits when doing something wholesome? Will it defeat the purpose of the good intention? Well, yes, it can, if we become over desiring for certain results, rewards from the good we do. It tends to bolster that sense of self, clinging to the idea of self. So I'm doing this so I can get this in the future, get this, get that, get some form of happiness. It's a very common way of thinking, isn't it? When we do good things, we can't help but start seeking something in return. It's just like when we go to work, we can't help but keep remembering how much they're paying us, and maybe we want a pay rise and we're thinking how much money we're going to get at the end of the month. It's the same sort of thing. So it won't totally defeat the purpose of doing good, but it's something to contemplate, isn't it? Try and separate out that sense of self, expectation. Even we kind of make bargains with karma, whoever's in charge of karma. So I'm going to do this, but you've got to give me that in return. There is no one in charge, it's us. We're making the causes and the good results will come. But the more you hope and expect something from the good karma you're making, you're diminishing the power of that good karma to help free you from suffering, because you're increasing the sense of self, the attachment, the delusion of self. So really we're all our practice of doing good on whatever level, dana, sila, bhavana, is channeling our mind towards nibbana, to letting go of greed, anger, delusion, letting go of the attachment to self, to this body and mind as a self. So try and keep that in the back of your mind as you're practicing dana, keeping precepts, meditating. You're doing it to let go. You're not doing it to increase your attachment, to accumulate anything. You're doing it to let go, and that will bring you true happiness. Second question, are merit-making ceremonies to be encouraged? Although we see it as a good opportunity to perform dana, but to others it may look like the organizers are just collecting funds. What is Ajahn's view on this? Well, yes and no. Yes, it can be just fund seeking, and people keep organizing ceremonies and sending out invitations and brochures and texts and emails and whatever, looking for money for their particular organization or project. And it can become annoying, and it may reflect anxiety on their part. Even Buddhist centers, you see they're always trying to get more members, more people come in, more money, do this, do that. It's not all bad. I mean, there may be some good ideas to build something useful for the community or whatever, but greed and attachment can slip in. So it is possible, but it's not always the case, is it? Sometimes ceremonies are useful. There are ways that many people can come together with a common purpose to support the Sangha in some way, to provide requisites for the Sangha or accommodation or buy land or something for a useful purpose. It can be like that as well. And a ceremony helps people to focus their mind, because as we see, our mind is often very scattered, distracted, moody. When you come to a ceremony, there are maybe things you have to concentrate on, a certain chant. You chant at the same time as everybody else, you perform that ceremony, a blessing is given, and this helps you to really focus your mind, so it often becomes wholesome. Faith arises at that time. And with a large number of people, maybe that's a very skillful way to get a large number of people to do something good together with a good outcome. So ceremonies are not all bad or distraction. They can become like that, but not always. So you have to look at what the purpose of it is, and if it's coming from a good intention with a good purpose, and try and see the positive side of it. But then, just as some of you are on this retreat, you've stepped away from your family commitments, your work commitments to do a retreat. Well, people in monasteries and Buddhist centers sometimes step away from the ceremonies to do more retreat time and meditate. So, yes, ceremonies can become burdensome and a distraction too. So many monks, they have periods where they go off on retreat because they've had enough of all the ceremonies and merit making. And so anyone who's really focused on improving their practice may, from time to time, want to set aside all that side of things, just focus on the meditation. But at the same time, they can be very useful for many people to come together and do something good. We have to come back to the intention behind it. Next question, service to others. How can we continue to inspire ourselves and others to do meritorious work when fatigue creeps in and turns the mind to less wholesome thoughts? Well, again, this is a very common or normal experience for people practicing, whether it's dana, sila, bhavana. We do get tired because practice requires effort. And the Buddha was very clear on that. Everything he taught requires effort. And that's an effort to go against your own negative tendencies and habits, the effort to arouse energy to help others, to meditate, to keep precepts when you're under pressure. All of this requires effort, so we will get tired. And you'll notice when you get tired physically or mentally, there's the opportunity, your mindfulness slips, and then more unwholesome thoughts can come into your thinking and your experience. So when we get tired, we get irritable. Sometimes we lose our inspiration and we want to give up because we're tired, and we can get burnt out, get fatigued. So part of our practice is to monitor that, to monitor our energy level, how much we're giving to the practice, and particularly serving others. You have to remember, in any action of serving others, you're one person in that equation as well, and you can't neglect yourself. So we can't just give everything to others and leave nothing for ourselves. A wise practitioner will preserve their own well-being, physical, mental strength, at least partly, so they can continue practicing, so that they can continue to serve and help others in the future. If one is constantly burnt out physically, mentally, then in the end you can't help yourself, you can't help others. So you have to monitor that and know your limits, know how much you can take on, know skillful ways to get some space for yourself. The best of all is if you learn to meditate, so that sometimes when you're feeling tired, burnt out, you go away and you quietly meditate. You recharge your battery. So you might do a retreat, or you just do your own meditation practice sometimes. to break up maybe the continuous service or the amount of service you're giving to others. You take some time out for yourself to recharge, experience some peace, some inner peace and joy. Then you maybe are able to carry on serving others. And that's coming from wisdom and experience. You know how much you've got left to give to others. You know how to preserve your physical health, your mental health. If it's somebody who's very experienced in the practice, maybe they've attained samadhi, they have samadhi, the skill of entering samadhi. They have deep insight, they're not attached to the physical feelings of the body as self. So someone like Ajahn Kalyano, he could give and give to others because he'd already developed an unshakable foundation in his mind. But nevertheless, living with Ajahn Kalyano, people were aware there were some days where he was tired and worn out, and maybe he would rest a bit more on them those days. Other days he seemed to have unstoppable amounts of energy, just endless amounts of energy, and nobody could match him. Even when he was getting older, younger monks couldn't match him. Same with Ajahn Mahabua, especially if any of you knew him during the period where he was doing a project to help raise funds for the National Treasury and going around all of Thailand, fundraising, making donations, teaching. He had amazing energy, even though he was a very skinny and fairly weak, physically weak man. His mental energy seemed to be limitless, and young, healthy monks just couldn't keep up with him. So someone on that level, say a noble one, well, they always have a certain peace of mind. They have their wisdom. They don't attach to negative mental states. They don't identify with physical pain or tiredness as self. So they do have something special, but they're quite rare. So most people have to know their limits and manage how much they serve the community. Don't take on too much. Know how to get a rest. And then you can keep going longer, and the service you give maybe is more effective. A question from someone called Karma. Dear Ajahn, what is it that gets reborn? Not a soul, not the consciousness, then what is it? Also, what does it mean by Dhamma is not to be found in moving forward, nor in moving backward, nor in standing still? Thank you. Well, as we know, all phenomena, physical, mental, are not self. So in the ultimate sense, nothing gets reborn. Nothing arises, nothing passes away. But on the conventional sense, and we use the conventions of language and these ideas to help communicate the Dhamma and just to understand things on that level, especially when our practice is only just developing. So we do talk about rebirth. A person makes karma through their life. They die. The physical body breaks up, but consciousness arises somewhere else in a new life according to karma. Yeah, it's a convenient way to talk, but it does give rise sometimes to this sense of, so there must be a soul or a self moving from life to life to life. And strictly speaking, that's not correct. That's not what's happening. It's just a chain of moments of consciousness. And this life ends, one moment of consciousness finishes, ceases, and then arises in another life. But there's no self that passes from one life to the other. What keeps the process going is karma, karmic formations. What keeps karmic formations going is avijja, ignorance of the truth, ignorance of the Four Noble Truths. Ignorance conditions craving and attachment. So as long as someone still is conditioned by craving and attachment through their life, then at death that will lead to more birth. But there's no person involved in all that. There's no abiding soul or essence. So we take that as a theory, a teaching to just prove through investigation of the Dhamma. And that might take a while of practice and in developing insight into our own experience. As far as Dhamma is not to be found in moving forward, nor in moving backward, nor in standing still. Well, the state of Nibbana isn't bound by time or space or place or location, is it? The mind of Nibbana is completely free, liberated. It doesn't alight on or leave a trace in the world anywhere. It doesn't alight on any physical form or any mental activity, thoughts, feelings, memory, consciousness. Doesn't alight, doesn't settle down anywhere. It's free. So it's as if it's not moving forward, backwards, up, down, anywhere. You can't pinpoint it. It's like that spiritual seeker in the time of the Buddha who used to tap skulls to know where people had been reborn. It's a special skill or knowledge he developed when someone dies and maybe they're buried, and then they collect the skull, and then he would tap the skull, and he could know through his samadhi, through his insight, oh, this person used to be in that realm, and then they'd been reborn in this realm, and could explain to people. But then when they give the skull of an arahant, he taps, it's like, oh, can't find it. Because there's no realm for Nibbana, there's no place. The consciousness is not settling anywhere. So somebody with a more worldly skill of knowing karma and where people are reborn, they can't follow the arahant. They can't keep up, and they can't find the trace of them. There's something just to reflect on. Anytime your mind is still settling on something, that's not Nibbana, is it? You settle on this body as me, it's not Nibbana. You settle on your thoughts as me, it's not Nibbana. Feelings, pleasure and pain, it's not Nibbana. Some people think of Nibbana as sort of up there. Maybe heaven is there and then Nibbana must be a bit higher. It sounds good, but Nibbana isn't high or low. It's nowhere. It's empty. But as soon as you mention emptiness, then it's like, what does your mind cling on to? It can't, so then it's hard to communicate. So there's the limitation of language and description. But never mind, press on and just keep working on looking at where your mind is still clinging, and that will help you to understand where suffering comes from, where ignorance is causing clinging, is causing suffering. Keep reflecting on this, and then these statements may become a little more clear over time. Next question from Chunyua, I think. Dear Ajahn, what is the difference between Sati panya and Sati sampajanya? Well, Sati appears in both phrases. One word is the same, mindfulness. Panya means wisdom, sampajanya means clear comprehension. So they're very close. But panya probably is a bit broader, covers all forms of wisdom, all forms of insight into the Four Noble Truths. Any kind of wisdom that removes suffering from our experience is panya. Sampajanya is defined more specifically as kind of clear comprehension, knowing the purpose of what you're doing. Say you're following the breathing, you know what the purpose of this is, what the goal is, and what's the most suitable way to do it, and you know that the breath is currently going in or currently going out. It's long, it's short, it's coarse and refined. So they say clearly comprehending, clearly with an all-round knowing. But one could practice Sati sampajanya, but some of the more refined levels of wisdom may not yet have been developed for that person. So Sati sampajanya leads on to panya and supports panya. So really, Ajahn Chah said they're like three friends: Sati, sampajanya, panya. Three friends that work together to bring clarity of insight that will help you to remove your craving and attachment from your experience. So they're very close, but they're not exactly the same. So there's another question from Flavio in Switzerland. Dear Ajahn, Thank you very much for your time and for sharing your wisdom with us. I was wondering what could be more beneficial: to stay during a winter retreat for 3 months at a female Buddhist monastery and support the small Sangha there, or to go to Thailand and stay at a good practice monastery like Wat Map Jan for some time. My intention is to become a monk one day, so I thought it might be useful to go to Thailand, but time for service and more personal practice sounds useful too. So I'm a little bit stuck between these two options. I'm wondering what your suggestion on this might be. Well, one thing is obviously at the moment that the world of COVID and pandemic means international travel is not so convenient. So at the very moment, probably it's not so possible to go overseas from Switzerland, if that's where you are. You might have to find a local monastery or place to practice, and that's good. But if you have the intention to become a monk, I would probably say number one choice would be to find a place where they ordain monks or train monks to stay, because you'll get more understanding of the monk's discipline, the Vinaya, and the monastic lifestyle, and you may make a good connection, and you may find that's a place you can later train and ordain. So somewhere where you can get to where they're giving monastic training for monks would probably be your number one choice. But as I said, because of COVID, maybe you don't have a lot of choice, or for other reasons you may be limited in your choice. So anywhere where they're practicing the Dhamma is good. You know, I wouldn't hesitate. Go now. Go off and practice as much as you can. Who knows what life will bring us in the future. Maybe in the future you won't have the chance to practice. So take your chance while you have it. When I went to Thailand with the thought to become a monk, the first teacher I went to see was Ajahn Chah, and Ajahn Chah provided training for foreigners. So when I got there, I said, this is it. I will do this, I will practice here, I will train as a monk here. And I was never disappointed. So that's another place you could go to one day maybe. Wat Map Jan is a very good place to train. Ajahn Anan is a very good teacher. So when you have your chance, don't hesitate, do it. Cut off your doubts, because our own mind is so tricky. You will always find excuses to wriggle out of something that seems a little bit challenging or difficult. So, you know, people who want to become a monk often have 101 excuses. They all sound very reasonable and correct. And so some people, unfortunately, never become a monk. They never try because their own mind talks them out of it. So I say if you have half a thought to try it, well, go off and try it. Find somewhere where you can train. Next question is from Sam. Dear Ajahn, in the morning Q&A, you mentioned about Silapata Paramasa. Can you elaborate? Take chanting, for example. We learn the Pali words of the chant by heart and appreciate the meaning of the chant. Otherwise, it is considered rites and rituals. Another example, believing that chanting will make our illness go away, is Silapati Paramasa. Whereas chanting to calm our mind when we have fear is not Silapati Paramasa. Is my understanding correct? Well, Silapata Paramasa, it tends to be coming from a view, or a wrong view, or a mistaken view that a certain practice kind of almost guarantees you success in reaching your goals, developing the Eightfold Path for Nibbana. You just sort of believe by, as you say, it could be chanting. If I chant this chant or these chants every day, I'm bound to become enlightened. I'm guaranteed it's going to happen. It's a kind of false belief where you're putting all your hopes that a certain practice is going to bring you enlightenment for sure. So there tends to be a certain lack of wisdom, investigation because we're attaching to a view or a belief without checking it out, investigating it. In a way, you could say, well, they talk about it as like a blindness of the mind. The mind is blind. You're not really penetrating beyond your belief or view. So Sila Patabharamasa can come up in so many ways. It could be just you believe April the 1st is April Fool's Day. And so it's a day when you make jokes and you kind of stick to that ritual through your life. Or that could be if you walk under a ladder, you're going to have bad luck. Sila Patabharamasa is countered by wisdom and understanding. So, chanting in itself can be a very useful aid to the practice. It can be a form of meditation, a way to develop mindfulness, a way to develop wholesome states of mind, increase your faith, that as you chant, both wisdom and faith can arise, samadhi can arise. It can lead on to many wholesome states. So chanting is not necessarily Sila Patabharamasa, but the way you view it can be. Like you say, you're ill, so you chant Itipiso 9 times every day, or the Bojjhanga Sutta 9 times, Bojjhanga Purita 9 times a day, or whatever. You're definitely going to heal. Well, it may happen, or it may not. The chant itself is only one causal factor for you healing. There'll be many other factors, such as your karma, whether you meet a doctor or get the right treatment. If your mind becomes wholesome from that chanting, the samadhi and the wholesome states can boost your immune system, and boost the healing system in the body. So it can certainly be a factor, but it's not fixed, is it? You're not guaranteed. So Sila Patabharamasa has to be investigated. The views, the beliefs that lie behind our actions, our practices. There's so many things in life that we don't question, we take for granted, we just follow. And so it's not really increasing our mindfulness and wisdom and increasing our ability to liberate the mind from attachment. It may just be blinding us or blocking us. And so even parts of Buddhist practice can become Sila Patabharamasa. So I do my hour of vipassana in the morning and my hour of vipassana in the evening. It's got to bring me something. It's got to make me a Sotapanna. I must be a Sotapanna because I can do it. Often Sila Patabharamasa is mixed up with a certain amount of craving and desire for certain goals, results. And certainly practicing an hour of vipassana in the morning, hour of vipassana in the evening can be a very useful and good practice. But it can also become an attachment. So even meditation techniques can become an attachment to a technique, a teacher, a place. All kinds of things can become an attachment. But at the same time, when mindfully investigated, wisely reflected, those attachments can clear, and certain practices can still be useful and supportive for training the mind towards liberation, but the view and the belief surrounding them is the important thing. That's what we've got to investigate. Another question, also from Sam. Sometimes we get samvega when we have major illness or encounter obstacles in life. However, is samvega also anicca too? When we recover from illness, we so easily fall back to pleasures. The more I listen to Dhamma, the more I feel that the most conducive way to walk the path is going forth. Could Ajahn please comment? Well, you're right. Samvega is a very wholesome state, supportive condition for giving you that boost, that urgency to practice, seeing the suffering of life, the sadness of life, seeing the suffering of attachment can boost you to want to practice to go beyond attachment and clinging, to liberate your mind. But that samvega can fade, like you say. Faith can fade. All the different spiritual qualities we're developing until the mind has entered the stream become the mind of a noble one, sotapanna upwards, there's always a chance for these qualities to fall back, degenerate. The mind can fall back. We can get caught into wrong views again, wrong practices. We can become fed up, depressed, maybe, and sometimes it happens. You encounter obstacles or illness, and then the obstacles lead you to give up because those different spiritual qualities haven't been fully established yet. Your insight is not so clear yet. So it's something we have to be aware of. So even Samvega can fade. Illness can go both ways, can't it? It can be a boost to your practice because it really makes you see the impermanence of life, the suffering of life, and make you want to practice. And that is true. Many people do start meditating when they have some serious illness because they realize training the mind is perhaps the most useful thing they can do. But it also can go the other way. Sometimes you get ill and you just want to give up. People become depressed. They stop meditating, stop following the Buddha. Maybe they even blame the Buddha. We had one guy come here one day and he got seriously ill and he said, I've been a Buddhist all my life and it hasn't helped me. Look, I've got ill and I'm now suffering, I'm depressed. I blame the Buddha. And he actually said that. So we can go both ways until our mind is firm in the Dhamma, firm in Sila, Samadhi and Panya. It can go up and down. Our faith and our effort can fall back. We have to bring it up again. And yes, people have practiced very diligently when they're ill, and then they get better from their illness and they stop meditating. It's all possible. So one of the themes of our practice is to make the mind firm in merit, firm in wholesome dhammas, developing unwavering faith in Buddha Dhamma Sangha, unwavering adherence to sila, to the development of samadhi, strong, unwavering samadhi, and then wisdom that stays, insight that stays with you. True insight, it stays, it doesn't disappear. That's our aim in the practice. Another question, maybe the last question, from Feli. I'm very confused about, what's that? Sanya, Sankhara and Vijnana. Could Ajahn kindly explain the difference between those terms? How also can I cope with feelings of infatuation with my Dhamma teacher? So confusion about Pali terms is totally normal. We all start off being a bit confused. What does a term mean? Sanya translates as perception, sometimes memory. So it's the way we remember experience, the way we remember sights, and we describe sight, sound, taste, smell, touch. Our sense data that we gather every day through our senses, the way we remember it, the labels, the language we use, the concepts we use. Say seeing, strictly speaking, when we see, all we're seeing is shapes and colours, but they have no labels, no names. But then immediately, as we learn language as we're kids, we start labeling everything. So we give colours names, blue, red, brown. We give all these shapes and objects names, chair, person, building, and so on. So language comes in and that helps to shape and describe sanya for us. Sanya gives us the details for our thinking mind, and sankhara is the thinking mind, mental formations, and particularly the kinds of intention, wholesome and unwholesome, that arise in our thinking, the choices we make, the decisions we make, our intention to speak. So we get vaji sankhara, also our verbal formations, there's mental formations, verbal formations, and then action. So sankhara is the kind of dynamic part of our mind, doing things, wanting to do things, get things, have things, experience things. Sanya gives us the details, the information to sustain sankhara, but they arise together in the same mind, but the Buddha in his wisdom is separating things out so we can understand better. And then vijnana is sense consciousness, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and so on. But one, for those of us who are not so smart, like when I started practicing, I felt I was really not very wise. But I appreciated, like in the morning chanting, we chant Sanya, Anicca, Sankhara, Anicca, Vijnana, Anicca. Throw them all in the bucket, Ajahn Chah used to say, throw them all in the bucket of they're impermanent. Perceptions are impermanent, mental formations are impermanent, sense consciousness is impermanent. What's impermanent is not self. Throw them all in these buckets of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, not self. In a way, that kind of simplifies your practice. You've got the one mind, you've got physical body, one mind coming up, arising, mental activity arising, and it's all impermanent and not self. That's a really simple way to start looking or investigating your experience. How long does a perception last, a memory last? Memories change, perceptions change, mental formations are constantly changing. It's a way of looking and understanding more deeply the experience you have as a human being. But the Pali terms are something you have to just invest a little bit of time in reading the definitions, hearing the explanations, and then learning to look and observe from your own experience. So they're like the map, the road map that you use to get from A to B. In the end, your aim is to get to the goal of to get to the destination. The words are useful along the way, but ultimately they're not the goal. They're only something you use along the way. How can I cope with feelings of infatuation with my Dhamma teacher? Well, it is common because Dhamma teachers are often coming from a place of mindfulness and compassion and kindness and wisdom, very attractive qualities. So when you practice and develop these qualities and you teach, often you become popular. People maybe find that you have helped them, so they become attached to a teacher because the teachers help them understand the Dhamma more. So it's a danger. The Buddha warned that there's a danger for the teacher wanting people to like them, wanting to impress people, attaching to their students. The most extreme form will be falling in love with their students. And it works both ways, so students can fall in love with the teacher. So you're learning to practice, number one, practice precepts, always behave properly with teachers, don't get too close to them. If you have feelings of infatuation arise, well, contemplate them. They're impermanent, they're not self, and they're unwholesome, to be abandoned. But they're normal, they might arise from time to time, but don't follow them. Keep the precepts, and if you're getting too infatuated, we'll separate from the teacher physically, mentally, because your aim in Buddhism is not to get attached to the teacher. Your aim is to realize Dhamma, and the teacher is simply helping you, giving you guidance and instruction. So if you're getting too attached to the teacher, we'll step back. And this can happen, it can come up, so you have to be vigilant, watch your mind and be honest. If you're getting too infatuated with someone, we'll step back, separate from them. You don't want to be an obstacle for them, just as they don't want to be an obstacle for you. And Buddhist centers and monasteries and places are not like dating apps. We're not here on a retreat to find a partner. Unfortunately, that happens because that's social human behavior, and humans are very social beings. So be wary of that intention that can come up. When you're bored in your meditation, you start looking around to see if there's someone attractive in the group, and you maybe want to start getting to know them. It's not what these places are for. It's not what the Buddha was teaching. So be on your guard not to follow that way of thinking or behaving. Let it go. Focus on the Dhamma, and you'll find you get much more happiness, and your mind goes to a much better place. So the time is up, the questions are finished. We'll leave the session there, and in a moment we'll pay respects to the Triple Gem.